I was fired for having ADHD. They said I was too distracted. 6 months later, they applied to my company. My name is Marcus. I'm 28 years old, and I've been living with ADHD my entire life. What happened to me 6 months ago changed everything I thought I knew about my condition and how the world sees people like me. I was working as a software developer at TechCorp, a mid-sized technology company downtown. Every morning felt like a battle against my own brain, trying to focus on tasks that seemed to shift and blur before my eyes. The open office environment was my personal nightmare. The constant chatter, keyboard clicking, phone ringing, and people walking by created a sensory overload that made concentration nearly impossible. My manager, Sarah, had already spoken to me twice about my lack of focus and inability to complete tasks on time. What she didn't understand was that my ADHD brain works differently. I could hyper-focus on interesting problems for hours, but mundane tasks felt like torture. Before I continue with the story that completely transformed my understanding of neurodivergence and success, if you believe that our differences can be our greatest strengths, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about overcoming prejudice and finding your true potential. Your support means everything to people like me who are fighting to change how society views ADHD and other neurological differences. That Tuesday morning in March started like any other. I arrived at the office 15 minutes late, which had become my unfortunate pattern. Traffic wasn't the real issue. It was the executive dysfunction that made simple tasks like getting dressed and leaving the house feel overwhelming. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and stared at the screen, trying to force my brain to engage with the debugging task I'd been assigned 3 days earlier. The code swam before my eyes. Lines of JavaScript blurred together as my mind wandered to a fascinating article I'd read about machine learning algorithms. This was the cruel irony of ADHD. I could absorb complex technical concepts like a sponge, but focusing on repetitive debugging felt impossible. My leg bounced under the desk, a nervous habit that had followed me since childhood. "Marcus, can I see you in my office?" Sarah's voice cut through my racing thoughts. Her tone was sharp, professional, but I could hear the frustration underneath. I followed her across the office, feeling my colleagues' eyes on me. Some looked sympathetic, others seemed relieved it wasn't them being called in. Sarah's office was sterile, decorated with motivational posters about teamwork and excellence. She gestured for me to sit down, then closed the door with a soft click that sounded like a gavel to me. "Marcus, we need to discuss your performance again. This is the 3rd time this month you've missed a deadline, and yesterday you interrupted the team meeting 6 times with off-topic comments. I wanted to explain that my interruptions weren't intentional, that my ADHD brain processed information differently, that I could see connections others missed but struggled with the social timing of conversations. Instead, I just nodded, feeling the familiar shame wash over me. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I've been trying to do better." "Trying isn't enough anymore," she said, opening a folder on her desk. "HR has documented several incidents. You've been late consistently, you seem distracted during meetings, and your work quality has been inconsistent. Yesterday, you spent 2 hours researching quantum computing when you were supposed to be working on the client's e-commerce platform. What she called distraction, I called following an intellectual curiosity that could lead to innovative solutions. What she saw as inconsistency, I experienced as the natural rhythm of a neurodivergent mind. Periods of intense focus followed by necessary mental rest. But I had learned long ago that explaining ADHD to neurotypical people often fell on deaf ears. "I know I have challenges," I said carefully, "but I've also contributed some innovative solutions to the team. Remember the algorithm optimization I developed last month? It improved our processing speed by 30%. Sarah's expression softened slightly. "That was good work, Marcus, but it doesn't make up for the reliability issues. Our clients need consistency, not occasional bursts of brilliance. I'm afraid we're going to have to let you go." The words hit me like a physical blow. I had been expecting this conversation, but hearing it still felt devastating. "Is there anything I can do to change your mind? I could work with HR on accommodations, maybe get noise-canceling headphones or a different workspace arrangement. We've already invested a lot of time and resources trying to make this work," Sarah replied. "The decision is final. You'll need to clean out your desk today." Walking back to my desk felt like a death march. My colleagues quickly looked away, pretending to be absorbed in their work. I mechanically packed my few personal items, a stress ball, a fidget cube, a photo of my younger sister Emma, who also had ADHD and was struggling in school. Each item felt like a piece of my identity being stripped away. That evening, I sat in my apartment, staring at the rejection email that would become part of my permanent record. The phrase "performance issues related to attention and focus" felt like a scarlet letter. I thought about Emma, about all the other kids and adults with ADHD who faced similar discrimination. The statistics were heartbreaking. People with ADHD were more likely to be unemployed, underemployed, and to struggle with self-esteem throughout their lives. But something inside me refused to accept that this was the end of my story. I had always been fascinated by entrepreneurship, by the idea of creating something from nothing. My ADHD brain, with its tendency to make unusual connections and think outside conventional boundaries, had always been drawn to innovation. Maybe being fired was the push I needed to finally pursue my own path. I spent the next week in what I can only describe as a hyperfocus state. I researched market gaps, analyzed industry trends, and sketched out business plans until 3 in the morning. My ADHD, which had been seen as a liability at TechCorp, suddenly became my superpower. I could see patterns others missed, make connections between seemingly unrelated concepts, and generate creative solutions at an incredible pace. The idea that emerged was deceptively simple: a project management platform specifically designed for neurodivergent teams. Traditional project management tools were built for neurotypical brains, linear, hierarchical, focused on consistent daily progress. But what if we could create something that worked with ADHD minds instead of against them? I began developing what I called flow state, a platform that used gamification, flexible deadlines, and AI-powered task matching to help neurodivergent individuals work to their strengths. Instead of punishing someone for missing a deadline, the system would automatically adjust timelines based on individual work patterns. Instead of forcing linear task completion, it would allow for the natural ebb and flow of ADHD attention. The development process was intense. I would code for 16 hours straight, then crash for 2 days, then have another burst of incredible productivity. My neurotypical friends worried about my irregular schedule, but I knew this was how my brain worked best. I was finally working with my ADHD instead of fighting against it. After 3 months of development, I had a working prototype. I reached out to my network of neurodivergent professionals, people I had met through online communities and support groups. The response was overwhelming. Beta testers reported significant improvements in productivity, job satisfaction, and mental health. One user said it was the first time she felt like a tool was designed for her brain rather than against it. I incorporated neurodynamic solutions and launched Flow State officially in month 4. The timing couldn't have been better. The pandemic had forced companies to reconsider remote work and employee wellness, and there was growing awareness about neurodiversity in the workplace. My first client was a small startup whose founder had ADHD. Within 2 weeks, they reported a 40% increase in project completion rates. Word spread quickly through the neurodivergent community. ADHD advocacy groups shared my story, autism organizations recommended the platform, and dyslexia support networks began discussions about neurodiversity in tech. I was invited to speak at conferences, write articles for industry publications, and consult with companies about inclusive workplace design. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same traits that got me fired, my tendency to hyper-focus on interesting problems, my ability to see unconventional solutions, my understanding of neurodivergent challenges, were now the foundation of a successful business. I had turned my disability into my greatest asset. By month 5, Neurodynamic Solutions had 12 employees, all of whom identified as neurodivergent. We worked in a way that honored our natural rhythms: flexible hours, minimal meetings, sensory-friendly office design, and tasks matched to individual strengths and interests. Our productivity levels were extraordinary, and our employee satisfaction scores were off the charts. That's when I received an email that made me laugh out loud. It was from Sarah, my former manager at TechCorp. The subject line read, "Partnership Opportunity." I opened it with curiosity and no small amount of satisfaction. "Dear Marcus," it began, "I hope this email finds you well. I've been following the success of Neurodynamic Solutions and Flow State with great interest. TechCorp is currently experiencing some challenges with project management and team productivity. and we believe your innovative platform could be exactly what we need. She went on to explain that TechCorp had been struggling with missed deadlines, employee burnout, and high turnover rates. Several competitors had started using neurodiversity-focused tools and were seeing remarkable results. The company was finally recognizing that their traditional management approaches weren't working for a significant portion of their workforce. We would like to schedule a meeting to discuss implementing flow state across our organization, the email continued. We're also interested in consulting services to help us create a more inclusive workplace culture. I believe your unique perspective and expertise would be invaluable to our team. I stared at the email for a long moment, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to respond with righteous anger, to point out the hypocrisy of a company that had fired me for having ADHD now begging for my help. But another part of me, the part that had spent years advocating for neurodivergent acceptance, saw this as an opportunity for real change. I called my sister Emma, who was now thriving in college thanks to proper ADHD accommodations and support. "Can you believe this?" I asked her. "The company that fired me for being too distracted now wants to hire me as a consultant." Emma laughed, but I could hear the pride in her voice. "Marcus, this is exactly why representation matters. You're not just succeeding despite your ADHD, you're succeeding because of it. And now you have the power to help other people like us." She was right. This wasn't about revenge or proving a point. This was about using my position to create lasting change for the neurodivergent community. I crafted a professional response, agreeing to meet with TechCorp's leadership team to discuss their needs and how neurodynamic solutions could help. The meeting was scheduled for the following week. I walked into TechCorp's conference room wearing a custom suit and carrying a leather portfolio, feeling like a completely different person than the insecure developer who had been escorted out 6 months earlier. Sarah was there, along with the CEO, the head of HR, and several other executives I recognized. "Marcus, thank you for coming," the CEO said, standing to shake my hand. "I want to start by acknowledging that we made a mistake. We failed to recognize your potential and to provide the support you needed to succeed. We're committed to doing better." I appreciated the apology, but I was more interested in their plans for the future. "What specifically are you hoping to achieve?" I asked. The HR director spoke up. "We've done some research on neurodiversity and realized that we've been losing talented employees because our workplace isn't designed for different types of minds. We want to implement your flow state platform, but we also want to understand how to create a more inclusive environment overall." Over the next hour, I presented the science behind neurodivergent thinking, the benefits of cognitive diversity, and the specific changes they would need to make to support employees with ADHD, autism, dyslexia, and other neurological differences. I talked about flexible work arrangements, sensory considerations, alternative communication methods, and strength-based task assignment. Sarah, who had been quiet throughout most of the presentation, finally spoke up. "Marcus, I have to admit I didn't understand ADHD when you worked here. I thought it was just an excuse for poor performance. I realize now that I was wrong, and I'm sorry." Her apology felt genuine, and I could see the discomfort in her eyes. "Thank you for saying that, Sarah. The truth is, most people don't understand neurodivergence because we're not taught about it. The important thing is that you're willing to learn now." The meeting concluded with TechCorp agreeing to a 6-month pilot program using FlowState, along with comprehensive diversity and inclusion training for all managers. They also committed to hiring more neurodivergent employees and creating accommodation protocols for current staff who might need support. As I left the building, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this moment. 6 months ago, I had been a struggling employee fighting against my own brain to meet neurotypical expectations. Now, I was a successful entrepreneur helping companies understand that neurodivergence wasn't a problem to be solved but a strength to be leveraged. The implementation at TechCorp was remarkably successful. Within 3 months, project completion rates had improved by 50%, employee satisfaction had increased significantly, and they had retained several valuable employees who had been considering leaving. 2 employees who had been struggling with performance issues were identified as having undiagnosed ADHD and began receiving proper support. But the real victory came when Sarah called me 6 months later. "Marcus, I wanted to give you an update on something personal. My son was just diagnosed with ADHD, and because of everything I learned from working with you, I was able to advocate for him at school and find him the right support. He's thriving now, and I don't think that would have been possible without your influence." That conversation reminded me why this work mattered so much. It wasn't just about business success or proving a point. It was about creating a world where neurodivergent children like my sister Emma, like Sarah's son, like I had been, wouldn't have to struggle in silence or feel broken because their brains work differently. Today, Neurodynamic Solutions employs 43 people across 12 countries, and Flow State is used by over 300 companies worldwide. We've helped thousands of neurodivergent individuals find success in their careers, and we've trained hundreds of managers to recognize and support cognitive diversity. But what I'm most proud of is the culture we've created. Our company motto is different minds, extraordinary results. And we live that every day. We have employees with ADHD who thrive in our flexible, project-based environment. We have autistic team members who bring incredible attention to detail and systematic thinking. We have dyslexic designers who see visual patterns in ways that neurotypical minds cannot. The experience taught me that ADHD isn't a deficit disorder. It's a different way of processing the world. Our brains are wired for innovation, creativity, and big-picture thinking. We can hyper-focus on problems that fascinate us, make connections others miss, and think outside conventional boundaries. The challenge isn't changing our brains to fit the world. It's changing the world to recognize and utilize our unique strengths. I still have difficult days. ADHD doesn't disappear just because you're successful. I still struggle with executive function, still have trouble with routine tasks, still deal with rejection sensitivity and emotional regulation challenges. But now I understand that these difficulties are just one part of the neurodivergent experience. They're balanced by incredible strengths that, when properly supported, can lead to extraordinary achievements. My story isn't unique. There are countless neurodivergent individuals in every industry who have been overlooked, undervalued, or pushed out because their minds work differently. But times are changing. Companies are beginning to recognize that cognitive diversity isn't just morally right, it's a competitive advantage. The research is clear: neurodivergent teams are more innovative, more creative, and better at problem-solving than neurotypical teams. Companies that embrace neurodiversity see improvements in productivity, employee satisfaction, and customer outcomes. The business case for inclusion is overwhelming. To anyone watching this who has ADHD, autism, dyslexia, or any other neurological difference, I want you to know that you are not broken. You are not less than. You are not defined by your challenges. You have unique strengths that the world needs, and there are people and organizations who will recognize and celebrate those strengths. The key is finding the right environment, the right support, and the right understanding of how your brain works. It might take time, it might require advocacy, and it might mean creating your own opportunities. But your neurodivergence is not a limitation, it's a superpower waiting to be unleashed. To employers and managers watching this, I challenge you to look beyond traditional notions of productivity and success. The employee who seems distracted might be processing information at a deeper level. The person who asks unusual questions might be seeing solutions you've missed. The team member who struggles with routine tasks might be capable of extraordinary innovation when given the right challenge. Neurodivergent employees aren't asking for special treatment, we're asking for equal opportunity. We're asking for workplaces that recognize that there's no one right way to think, to work, or to contribute. We're asking for the chance to show what we can do when we're supported rather than stigmatized. The journey from being fired for having ADHD to running a successful company dedicated to neurodiversity wasn't easy. It required resilience, self-advocacy, and a willingness to challenge conventional thinking. But it also revealed something powerful: when we stop trying to fix neurodivergent minds and start designing systems that work with them, everyone benefits. My ADHD brain, which was once seen as a liability, became the foundation of a business that has helped thousands of people. The traits that got me fired, my tendency to hyperfocus, my ability to see unconventional solutions, my understanding of neurodivergent challenges are now my greatest professional assets. This is the power of reframing neurodivergence. Instead of asking, how can we make this person more normal, we should ask, how can we create an environment where this person can thrive? Instead of focusing on deficits, we should focus on strengths. Instead of trying to force square pegs into round holes, we should create workplaces with spaces for all shapes and sizes. The story doesn't end here. Every day, we're working to expand understanding, create opportunities, and build a world where neurodivergent minds are not just accepted but celebrated. We're training managers, developing tools, conducting research, and advocating for policy changes that will benefit current and future generations of neurodivergent individuals. If you're a parent of a neurodivergent child, know that early support and understanding can make all the difference. If you're an educator, consider how your teaching methods might be adapted to reach different types of learners. If you're a policy maker, think about how your decisions impact the neurodivergent community. And if you're neurodivergent yourself, remember that your mind is not a mistake. You are part of the natural diversity of human consciousness, and the world needs what you have to offer. The challenge is not to change yourself to fit the world, but to find or create spaces where your authentic self can flourish. The company that fired me for being too distracted now serves as a case study in our diversity training programs. They've become one of the most neurodiversity-friendly organizations in their industry, and their success has inspired other companies to follow suit. Sarah, my former manager, now speaks at conferences about inclusive leadership and the importance of understanding neurodivergence. This transformation didn't happen overnight, and it required commitment from everyone involved. But it proves that change is possible when we're willing to challenge our assumptions, listen to different perspectives, and create systems that work for everyone. As I reflect on this journey, I'm filled with hope for the future. The conversation about neurodiversity is growing louder, more companies are recognizing the value of cognitive diversity, and more individuals are finding the courage to advocate for themselves and others. We're moving toward a world where being different is not just accepted but celebrated as a source of strength and innovation. My ADHD will always be part of who I am, but it's no longer something I hide or apologize for. It's my superpower, my creative engine, my unique lens through which I see the world. And every day, I get to help other neurodivergent individuals discover their own superpowers and find environments where they can thrive. The fire that was meant to end my career became the spark that ignited a movement. And that movement is just getting started.